as a marketer, some people think that, marketing just does the brand and the campaigns and it's really the sales part of the org that owns the revenue number. But I've kind of never thought that way. I've always tried to be a marketer that's wanted shared ownership of the number.
Was there a moment that you realized that you were no longer just kind of thinking like a marketing leader and more like a revenue owner?
One of the main reasons I kind of went that way is because to me it was almost like the closest link to marketing and the bottom line. You had like that really clear link with attribution and measurement and being able to see the impact that you're having. So I think, it's always been pretty ingrained in me early on to kind of own that number alongside sales.
Welcome back to another episode of Growth Unlocked. I'm your host, Kieran Cron. Today's guest is Tara Salmon. She's the Chief Revenue Officer at Firmable. Tara's built her career across some of Australia's most successful B2B tech companies, spanning a few different roles across CMO, Chief of Staff, and now the CRO. She's operated inside two of the country's largest tech exits, which is pretty impressive, and now owns the full revenue number at Firmable as they expand locally and internationally. In the episode today, we're going to explore her journey in terms of how she's gone from CMO now into CRO. So Tara, thanks a lot for joining us. I'm really delighted to have you on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Kieran.
Cool, let's get stuck in. So Tara, across your time as, CMO, Chief of Staff, and now CRO, was there a moment that you realized that you were no longer just kind of thinking like a marketing leader and more like a revenue owner?
Yeah, probably a few moments over time, really. I think, as a marketer, some people think that, marketing just does the brand and the campaigns and it's really, sales part of the org that owns the revenue number. But I've kind of never thought that way. I've always tried to be a marketer that's wanted shared ownership of the number. Even really early in my career, I started with GuT&x and was there for 14 years, but I started as a marketing grad. And I remember about a year or so into my time there, and we were 25, 30 odd people at that point. We're starting to hire the next round of marketers. And I kind of had my choice of what do you want to do? What area of marketing do you want to specialize? And I actually chose digital. And back then it was, the world of brochure sites and digital marketing really meant let's put some money into Google Ads and SEO, which was a whole different kind of kettle of fish back then. But I think one of the main reasons I kind of went that way is because to me it was almost like the closest link to marketing and the bottom line. You had like that really clear link with attribution and measurement and being able to see the impact that you're having. So I think, it's always been pretty ingrained in me early on to kind of own that number alongside sales. And then that grew again when I was CMO and really owning the marketing engine, but in my world, like in partnership with the CSO at the time in MessageMedia and now at Firmable, I guess, another evolution, probably another couple of trigger points were when I was the one that actually had to do the first frontline sales and, before we were able to hire in our first sales hires. So that was probably another turning point where it's like, okay, I actually do own this revenue number. And then fast forward to today, I guess, I never thought I'd be that person that's literally refreshing the ARR number day to day, but here we are. So look, I think a few moments along the journey of where I felt, I guess, that turning point. But I think good for any young marketers out there is just always be thinking about how you can contribute to revenue and the bottom line.
Yeah, you've raised some good points, and that's the one thing that I've noticed over the last, probably 5 or so years at least, that sort of marketers in general have become, in a way, kind of like more responsible for revenue and having numbers and KPIs that are related to pipeline generation and, influence revenue, etc. So it sort of makes sense in terms of how you've been seeing things like that from a long time. But you mentioned before you probably never really saw yourself, if you go back, 10, 20 years ago in this CRO role. That's kind of just the nature of how life is, right? Like you kind of take different directions. if you kind of think back to like when you started to get into marketing and someone had told you that you were going to be a CRO one day, what would you have said to them?
I don't even think CRO was a thing back then. It probably would have been meant something else for an acronym. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I was always pretty ambitious. I was fortunate in that very early on, I knew I wanted to do marketing. I actually worked that out in high school. I loved my art and drama, but I really loved my maths and business studies and stuff as well. So marketing, I felt as kind of the natural fusion of the two. So I just knew that I wanted to, run marketing in an organization, and I think it was probably during my time, especially at GuT&x, and that was a really big chunk of my career where I always felt like this inkling to I want to lean in more. I want to get more involved on the sales part of the org because I, as a marketer, felt like I could only influence to a point. So yeah, did I think I'd be CRO? No, it wasn't. It wasn't even really a thing back then. But I'm glad it is now.
Yeah, got it. And what would you say have been the biggest differences or are the biggest differences from just the day-to-day of a CMO versus what you're doing now as a CRO?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's different flavors of CROs. So for us here at Firmable, I'm overseeing the sales function, marketing, customer, and then RevOps, helping to kind of connect the systems and tech and dots between them. So yeah, I think it's just as a CMO, you're on the exec team and you have to still bring a whole of business approach to what you do as part of an executive team. I think that's just even more exaggerated as a CRO running multiple functions. You're trying to close these big deals that might have implications for customer or product, and you are actually thinking about the bigger picture and what is the right thing for the business versus just kind of necessarily short-term revenue gains. So yeah, I think it just really forces you into that, taking that whole of business approach to every decision or engagement and hiring and yeah, all those key decisions.
In a way, it's, the kind of role that's extremely important to a business because instead of looking at things in, isolation or a particular department or a silo, you're
Mhm.
looking at things holistically across the whole customer journey and the full revenue cycle, right?
Yeah. Yeah, completely. And look, it kind of, it works for an organization of our size now. It wouldn't necessarily work in every organization, or when you get to a certain size. We may need to revisit that. But it was one of the things that when we founded Firmable a few years ago, and as we were working through go-to-market planning in that first year before launch, was, yeah, we just wanted to, really kickstart the business with having a tightly aligned go-to-market organization, one vision, everybody moving towards the same goals. We still to this day have our weekly all team catch ups so that cross functionally everybody's aligned. And yeah, I think it's worked really well for us to date and for our size.
Even in 2026, I still scratch my head sometimes and go, "My God, how is this still an issue?" But we always see these common problems with businesses where they don't have proper alignment between
Mm,
marketing and sales, and then sales and customer success.
yep.
How have you addressed that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. From the get go, even the nature of our structure helps to keep us aligned. I I think when a business looks at shared ownership of revenue targets and that every single person, every single department can play a role in that and everybody's working towards the same North Star, I think that makes a big difference. So we try to really communicate that across the board, not just within the go-to-market functions, but across product, tech, everyone. Um, we had our annual kickoff a couple of weeks ago. That wasn't just a sales kickoff; it was a go to market kickoff. So again, it's setting the entire go-to-market org up for the year and everybody working towards the same vision. We've just launched new branding and messaging, so it's getting everybody aligned with the new positioning. And so I think there's structure things you can do. There's forums and communication. I think also just, when you're hiring as well and you're bringing people into an organization, making sure people are coming in with that mentality of, yes, I have my role, but how can I also play a role more broadly across the organization? How can I work well with other teams? And, so I think hiring well for people that have similar mindsets as well is helpful.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the mistakes I see a lot of businesses make, even large companies, when they do their annual kickoffs. It's still a sales kickoff, right? And it's like, I mean, what about all the other people that are feeling left out in the business? I think it's important to make sure that everyone is looking at it, like you said, holistically as sort of one joint team, everyone working together, having shared goals, and kind of understanding where the company is heading, and like you said, that North Star metric that you're working towards.
Yep. Yeah. Completely agree. Yeah, and whether you're working in support, frontline, talking to customers every day, or you're behind the scenes, RevOps, helping set up the systems, the infrastructure, like everybody plays a role to help make our business better, our customers more successful, and all of that ultimately means that we're going to grow faster as a business. So yeah, incredibly important. I think that cross-functional alignment.
The chief of staff role that you had when you were at GuT&x was quite interesting. I'd love to learn a bit more about that, because obviously it was at a time when there was some sort of M&A activity, and things would have been quite quite complex, and I guess a lot of different moving parts at that point in time. And the chief of staff role is something that's also probably quite unknown to a lot of businesses as well. Can you talk me through what your learnings were when you were in that chief of staff role, particularly as it came to that acquisition that was happening?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting time. So I think it was back in 2017. Lee Jasper, who was the co-founder and CEO at GuT&x, I think realized it was kind of the right time for the business to bring in a chief of staff role to, I guess, help free him up a little bit, but still keep that oversight of kind of the big ticket items or key initiatives happening across the business. And I think with those roles, it was particularly new back then. Don't really know if any Australian tech companies had really had that. We were extremely global. We were in 60 plus countries, I think, at that point. I'd been living in San Francisco for the prior 7 years. I think, I think it's important you kind of have somebody that really understands the business, that's, been around long enough to kind of know ways of working and what's important to the business. So he tapped me on the shoulder, said, "Hey, do you want to step into this chief of staff role?" And I'd moved back from San Francisco to Australia because he was now living in Australia at the time, and it was important to kind of work hand in hand. And I think I landed on the Sunday, was in the office on the Monday, and the bid from Oracle came in on the Friday. And then Lee gave me the weekend before he told me on the Monday, just to at least have been there for a week. But it really changed, I guess, the nature of what my chief of staff role was to become. So really the big strategic initiative for the business then was working through the acquisition. So it was probably 6 months or so working on that due diligence, the interface with Oracle and the banks and so forth, and internally gathering information while still keeping that under wraps. And then post acquisition announcement through to change in control, and then thereafter really helping with the integration of the two companies, which we weren't small at that point. We were over 1,000 employees, and people all over the globe, customers all over the globe, massive accounts. I think probably 250 million in revenue at that point. So we weren't small by any means, but compared to Oracle, we were. So trying to kind of help combine and smoothly integrate those companies was a bit of a task. So it was an amazing experience. Obviously, completely different to anything a typical marketer would work on day to day. But it was great exposure to the broader workings of an organization, all the moving parts that goes into an acquisition process as well. Um, direct line of sight into kind of how decisions are made. um, and I think it probably just really helped me set up well for the next phase of my career, which was moving into the CMO role at MessageMedia, because I'd kind of had that exec level exposure um, and engagement through the chief of staff role, which probably softened the landing, I think, in stepping into CMO.
Must have been a wild time. Geez, I can imagine the amount of learnings you took out of that was just, almost doing an MBA compressed down into a pretty short period of time. What would you say would have been like the biggest learnings for you in terms of like really getting to look under the hood of how a business operates?
Um, Yeah, I mean, there was completely new things to me, like just on how to engage with banks during an acquisition process and stuff like that. But I think probably one of the key things was in that kind of funny time between like an acquisition getting announced and change of control. You're in this flux period of like not yet fully owned and kind of managed and controlled by the new company, but you still need to. Um, you know, basically get sign off or get alignment on any decisions happening during that time. So, new hires, changes in roles, bringing any new tech into the business, all of that had to go through a much more structured decision tree process, which actually all funneled through me for several months. So I think for me, it was getting really close to the business case to decision making kind of process in an org, and actually having to weigh that up across different functions as well. So, okay, I've got, these three different functions or managers wanting XYZ things. I know that we're not going to get these all over the line. We might get this and that, and having to kind of manage those stakeholders and those expectations. That was probably like a unique situation where there was a lot of that I had to kind of oversee and manage in a very short space of time.
And that's probably a really common thing that a lot of executives have to deal with, right? In terms of just
Mm,
managing priorities, in terms of, what's got to come up the top and
yep,
certain things that might need to be parked and come back to later.
totally.
Did you have any kind of, I don't know, like process around that? Like how did you prioritize things?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very structured process and multi layers of kind of approvals from there. But yeah, look, it was literally just having a structured way for people to think about, okay, what's the ask? Why is it needed? Why does it need to happen now and not later? Um, and it's not that different to how we do think about or should be thinking about things now. It's just, yes, adding a little bit more structure to making sure people are actually working through those steps before just saying, yeah, let's do it, or no, let's not, because sometimes not doing something is the wrong call as well.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. So, I mean, that was an awesome experience. And that was one of the exits you were part of. There was obviously the second, which was with MessageMedia getting acquired by Cinch. Um, what, I guess, overall, like when you look at in combination, when we look at maybe like more of the message media side of things, what did that teach you about building a successful business?
Yeah, the message media part of the journey was really interesting. I went there kind of post the integration of GuT&x and Oracle, and was there for about 3.5 years, I think, or a few years before again going through another acquisition process. Um, and it's funny. It was quite a successful business in spite of not having, a lot of structure or systems and processes in place at the time. So a lot of what my job and the jobs of other execs and Paul, who was CEO there for that period, who's now one of the co-founders alongside Lee here at Firmable, was to come in and I guess really accelerate growth and bring some of that structure and order and so forth to the business. We acquired a number of other businesses which helped accelerate revenue growth as well during that period. I think when I reflected, what are like what's maybe one of the biggest common similarities between those two businesses, because they were quite different in many respects. They were, GuT&x was more kind of enterprise selling, a different sales motion. MessageMedia, really scaled all sizes from very small SMBs up to large companies as well, but a very heavy, inbound and more marketing demand led motion than what GuT&x was. So lots of differences in many areas of the business, but I think what was common between them was just this really inherent focus on the customer. So really having a solution in both instances that solve for like a really clear pain point. I think we were always talking with customers, regular feedback loops. Both organizations had a really top tier customer function from support through to success and account management. It was at the center of product development. It was at the center of our marketing and creating kind of good customer referenceability and proof points. So I think that's probably one of the key things that stands out in what I think made them quite successful businesses is just, yes, you want to grow, yes, you want to focus on revenue, but that will come if you're focused on the customer and really, solving for their needs.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the most common threads that's come up in a lot of these conversations I've had with other execs and go-to-market leaders over the last, 2 or so years. And I mean, like everyone talks about it, right? Listen to your customer, spend time with your customer, understand what their pain points are. But it sounds like you guys were doing it really well. Like, can you even think about like what specifics or potential playbooks or tactics that go-to-market leaders could maybe borrow from what you guys were doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of it's not rocket science. It is just doing some of the basics. Get out and talk to customers. The amount of marketers that I speak to that don't speak to customers because, oh no, that's sales or customer people role. Create an opportunity, shadow during a sales meeting or conversation. So I think, getting really close to customers and for everybody across the org. I mean, I remember back in GuT&x days, we actually had this initiative where once a quarter, every single person in the company sat on help desk for a day. Like literally, like you might shadow for the first hour or two and then you're fielding calls. So you're helping customers with logging in or whatever the issue might be. So no matter what your role, there's ways to facilitate just connecting better with customers. And we're still always looking for ways to improve. We don't do all of that perfect yet at Firmable, and we're trying to move fast, but we're just trying to get some of those basics right, getting constant feedback loops from customers, have a direct line channel into product development. So I think a lot of it's just fundamentals, but no matter what your role is, you can make sure that they've got some connection to the end customer.
Mm. And that's one thing I've noticed. I mean, even with the partnership that we Scale Station have with Firmable, is that you seem to be really interested in getting feedback and actually kind of hearing from us around sort of our experiences leveraging the technology for our customers. And I think that partner side is also super important as well, particularly if it's a part of your go-to-market motions around working with partners and kind of tapping into those relationships with partners that not only can help you to go to market, to acquire customers and to service those customers, but also to get candid feedback around the product and take those bits of feedback on board when you're building your product roadmap.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I mean, partners are at the front line with our customers as well. They're our partners because they share the same ICP and have similar desires to bettering the end customers, sales organizations or growth functions, whatever it might be. So yeah, definitely encourage other go to market leaders, if you're not already, to leverage partnerships, not just for that customer feedback loop, but to your point, also as a potential demand gen channel as well. People these days like to buy from people they trust or to be referred to somebody by people they trust. So just having really good connections into trustworthy partners is I think critical from just a referenceability point of view and helping spread the good word.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. So, Tara, I think recently you might have announced that Firmable has cracked the 1,000 customer mark. So, congratulations! Pretty huge achievement in a very small period of time. I'm interested, to hear a bit about with this expansion. You guys now moving into other regions outside of Australia, into Southeast Asia, um, and I think you might have like 4x the size of your team as well. Um, I guess if you had to credit the success and kind of growth of the business to a couple different go-to-market bets that you've made,
hmm
what would they be?
Um, yeah, really good question. Look, I think a foundational thing, just like what I was talking about before, is just that relentless focus on the customer at all levels of the organization. It's really helped drive and shape not just the product that we have to offer, but how we present that to customers as well. Um, I think hiring well is so important. So, 2 years ago, I was only just bringing on the first sales hire. It was basically me in go to market function. Last year, I think we were about 8 in go to market, and now I need to check, but over 30 or so. So a lot of growth in a short space of time. Uh, but yeah, I think hiring well is so important, particularly those first early hires that help set the tone for the organization and set the culture and the standards and the expectations. And we're really fortunate to really back some winners there. And um, yeah, and then just that continuous, like, making sure we're bringing on people that are ambitious, are really team play oriented, driven by the kind of North Star and the vision that we have as well. I think the other thing which sometimes people forget about because they're like, oh, we can bring that in later, is thinking about like, the systems and the tooling early on. So, I kind of put HubSpot in place just as an example, um, before we even had our first sales hire. So, and before we even made our first customer call, it was like, well, it's obvious we need somewhere to, manage this and track our conversations. Just in the same way, as soon as we started with outbound sales, we completely embedded Firmable into our own go-to-market motions. So, think about the tools and the systems early. And right now, we're really at a point where we're now looking, okay, we need to, we're 5x last year. We need to do the same thing again this year. What you did last year isn't going to, get the same results this year. Is like, what different things can we do? And I think a really key thing that we're betting on now, if I can throw a bonus one in here, is just looking at how we can better scale and systematize things. So, okay, we've got some good sales processes in place. We've, our outbound call function just works a treat. Like, we get great call connects and then the proposition really resonates. So now it's like, okay, what are the next things we can do to drive efficiency or to take away more of the admin from the salespeople? So I think it's now just really placing some bets, and we've put some roles in place to help with this as well, is to really drive more efficiency, scale and just repeatability in a lot of the processes we have across sales, marketing, and customer.
Yeah, it makes sense when you've achieved that product market fit and you know that you've got consistent interest and adoption of the
Mhm.
products. Then it kind of moves into the next phase, which is scale, and obviously using technology, systems, automation, AI, etc., to help you to achieve that scale. And I think this is kind of where the importance of RevOps and this go-to-market engineering role has become a lot more popular over the last year or so. Has really kind of shone a light on how businesses are looking for this, profitable and efficient growth, not just growth for the sake of it. And so, you raised a good point there, which I think is something that I have noticed with most companies around just the absurd inefficiency that sales teams have. I mean, you could probably look at that across most departments, but particularly sales when it comes to all of the legwork and all of the admin and things that they have to do to prepare to even make a phone call, right?
Mhm.
Or have a meeting with a prospect or a customer.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, like Firmable is like a great way to solve a lot of that when it comes to making sure that you've got an enriched and up to date database, you've got the person's contact details, etc. You know who they are. So I think like you're obviously really well positioned to do that because you're building a product that you're using internally. Um, but I think even kind of beyond that is like, how do we start to pull in multiple data points and signals from different areas, and then how do we synthesize that and help basically like to create almost like a point of view and like an approach that sales teams can take when they're reaching out to key decision makers within different businesses, and essentially like just give them everything that they need on a platter. So when they go to pick up the phone and make a call or send an email, they've got all that context. So they just it's around, I guess, how do we go from most businesses where salespeople are probably spending 25 to 30% of their time actually selling or speaking to customers to getting that up to like 70 to 80%. That's that kind of gap and that efficiency gain that I think a lot of businesses are looking for, right?
Oh, completely. And there's nothing that pleases me more when I kind of look at the calendar across the sales team and they're just, blocked out with demos and customer catch ups because that's where they should be spending all of their time. We don't want them spending time, doing admin or manual entry, keeping their CRMs up to date, or taking, time having to Google or find, details on an account to help prepare them for a meeting. We want to make it really quick and easy for them. That's what we do with Firmable, but also in conjunction with other key tech like CRMs, HubSpot and otherwise, or tooling like Fathoms or Gongs. Or it's combining that external data that you need to be able to reach, as you say, the right ICP, get the contact information outreach, be well prepared, having the research and kind of intelligence about an account at your fingertips. And really importantly, and where we're investing a lot of our time is in those signals that tell you when it's a good time to reach out. So, okay, for us, a new head of sales has just joined an organization, or somebody's hiring for SDRs. Great signal for us to reach out to them. So, we're constantly looking ways ourselves on how to improve sales efficiency. And then the great thing is we can then, feed that directly into the product development to make sure we're making it as easy as possible for our end customers as well.
And I'll tell you what, Tara, I am super excited for the day that these signals from Firmable push into HubSpot.
It's
I
coming.
know good because I know that's huge, and this is something that we speak to our customers about a lot. It's like, let's not just be spraying and praying. Let's actually have some sort of meaningful reason and a trigger or a signal to actually reach out. And so the more that we can operationalize that in the system of record, like the CRM, the more that we can keep people kind of in one place, which also
Yeah.
helps with that efficiency.
Absolutely. So we've got these kind of AI signal agents that can be set up and are working in the background of Firmable to kind of monitor the things that are important to you. But rather than just alerting you to come back into Firmable, we want to have our agents go, okay, I can configure this to say, create a task in HubSpot for follow up or whatever it might be. However you like to work, we want to make it as easy as possible. So, yes, they are being worked on at the moment. So I'm very excited for that release also.
Nice, bring it on. Tara, I wanted to go back to, I guess, your journey in the career that you've gone through, which is super impressive. I mean, if you look back on that journey, what would you say would be one or two key lessons that you wish that you might have learned earlier that might have changed, I guess, your approach to your career in general?
Um, yeah, I think a couple of things I like to think, "Oh, I would do this differently," but then I go, "If I did that, would I be where I am now?" And I'm really happy with where I am now. So it's kind of a hard question to answer, if that makes sense. But, um, I think I don't think I knew the meaning of work-life balance earlier in my career. Um, I just I work like a dog, to be honest. And look, maybe that helps, you know, get me to where I am. Maybe it helped open up new opportunities. But at the end of the day, you can only bring your best self to work if you're looking after yourself. So I think I do a much better job these days of just trying to find that work-life balance, trying to make sure I, get enough sleep to turn up well at work. Yeah, so I think probably work-life balance is maybe the one area where I just maybe have some regrets about not looking at it slightly differently earlier on. Um, yeah, that's probably, I think, the big one for me.
It's kind of like understated, but I mean, you need to be able to be energized and be able to bring your best self to your job and your personal life, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, the value of getting a good night's sleep and waking up feeling
Mhm.
rested and avoiding a sensation or this potential risk of like getting burnt out.
Yep.
Yeah, it's something that I think is definitely important. And
Mhm.
yeah, everyone has different ways of doing that, right? I mean, you just got to
Yep.
find what kind of recharges you, gives you energy, what helps you to kind of get back into that right headspace.
Yep. I've got much better as well at the start of the year going, "Okay, what's my big holiday or holidays for the year as well?" So, because otherwise you find yourself just getting towards the end of the year and you're like, "Wait, I haven't really stopped or taken a break yet." So, being quite purposeful about those breaks throughout the year, I think is really important, as well as just your day-to-day routines.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing better to look at your calendar and say, all right, I've got 2 weeks in April coming up. And also, yeah, I've got a lot of stuff to do in between now and then. How do I get ready for it? But then be working towards that and have that,
Yep.
you know, that
It's the
is like,
personal North Star as well as the work
yeah,
one. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Tara, just to round things out, let's just say hypothetically, if you had a crystal ball, what do you see as being the future of the CRO role? If you consider where everything's moving when it comes to tech, AI, go to market, and all these kind of shifts that we're seeing at the moment, what do you see the role of the CRO being in, another 5 years' time?
Uh, it's a really good question. I don't know if I know the answer to that. I think one thing that's changing though is because there's very different flavors of CROs, just in the same ways there's very different flavors of RevOps and certain other roles too. Um, in some organizations, it's just kind of running the sales function and then working well with others. Um, I think I think more and more the CRO will not just be sales, they'll kind of align across functions, but probably even more so really own that RevOps slash go to market engineering role and function in the organization. It's someone that is that real AI champion or, process improvement champion. It's not just left to kind of the COO or that part of the organization. I think more and more CROs will need to feel like they've got kind of hands-on responsibility for that as well. Maybe that's one area it might change a bit.
I definitely plus one on that. And I think that there's going to be a need for CROs to not just be strategic, but also technical as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, because it is getting easier to build these things. If you can combine that kind of strategic thinking with the technological leverage that you get by using, automation, AI, like all these different tools that you've got. I think that becomes really powerful. And, it's pretty amazing these days how much leverage you can get through this technology that, when you can combine those two things together, even me, like I don't really know much about marketing, but the kind of stuff that I can do now is almost like I can operate at the team of like 4 or 5 marketers just with limited knowledge and just with access to some of these tools. So I think it's 100% agree. It's going to be a combination of those two skills and those CROs that can actually embrace the technology, not necessarily like even get their hands on it, but actually have an understanding of how it all comes together are the ones that are going to be most in demand in the future.
Yeah, and look, I think that kind of applies to most roles in go-to-market organizations as well. Like you could be an AE, but the AEs that are leaning into and leveraging the tech and the AI and those efficiencies are the ones that are going to do exceptionally well. So yeah, I think that kind of concept applies a bit more broadly too.
Yeah, absolutely. Tara, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining today. If people want to maybe follow along on your journey in the future or learn more about what you're doing at Firmable, where's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, so you can go to firmable.com and follow us there. We also have a resources section with blogs and go-to-market plays that might be useful for people in the go-to-market space. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. Just search for Tara Salmon. You'll find me.
Amazing. Tara, thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Karen.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Growth Unlocked Beyond Scale. If you enjoyed the show, it would really be appreciated if you can leave a 5-star review wherever you consume your podcasts. And while you're there, why not subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes? If you'd like to learn about how to drive profitable scale in your business, gain clarity on your direction, and improve your business valuation, click the link in the show notes to connect with Kieran.